Hello, everyone, and welcome to Explaining the Unexplainable. And I am one of the hosts, Mercedes Lucke Benedict, and I have my co-host over here, Bishop Dr. Joshua Sparks.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, you over there in that square. Well, Bishop Joshua, we got a really great guest, another
We
great guest
absolutely
tonight.
do.
So I'm going to let you take it away because I love you're here with me and you can do the most amazing intros. That is what you are so good at. So I'm letting you take over.
See, what she don't want you to know, Kevin, is she writes all the intros and makes me read them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, grab your coffee, turn down your lights. Welcome back to another episode of Explaining the Unexplainable. I hope you had a wondrous Thanksgiving. We've survived another Thanksgiving. What a blessing it was to be with family. The show that we are on tonight is a show dedicated to peeling back the veil between the seen and the unseen, the natural and the supernatural. I'm here with my phenomenal co-host, Mercedez Lucke Benedict, and our wonderful guest tonight. We're stepping into the world of a man who has lived his entire life in the crossfire between this world and the next, a man whose journey began before most children even know what fear is. Our guest, Kevin Killen, had his very first paranormal experience at only 5 years old, back when he was living in the Chicago area after coming from the Philippines. And from that moment, his life has been a tapestry of unexplained activity, phantom footsteps, doors that open and close by themselves, and yes, even a resident poltergeist that followed him during his college years in Pennsylvania. Kevin is not only a lifelong experiencer, he's an award-winning journalist, an advocate for individuals with developmental disabilities, and a man who has worked extensively with those in addiction recovery, a man after my own heart. His first book, Ghost and Me, chronicles decades of encounters most people only whisper about, and he's currently working on his second. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to explore the unexplainable through the eyes of someone who has lived it. Kevin, we are honored to have you on the show tonight. So let's start right at the beginning, because your story doesn't start with ghost hunting or investigators or investigations. It starts with childhood. At just 5 years old, you had your first paranormal encounter. Can you take us back to that moment? What happened? And did you realize even then that your life would be anything but ordinary?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. And that was an awesome introduction. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I think you hit all the bases, checked all the boxes, as it were.
All right.
But yeah, so my journey, like you said, started at 5 years old. I was living outside of Chicago in a town called Evanston, Illinois. And I were living in this big rambling brick home. Turn of the century. It could be in any science fiction movie. It was just, through the eyes of a 5-year-old, everything was big and scary. And my father at the time was a journalist, and he went and covered, excuse me, he went to go cover a game in, I think, St. Louis, and he took my brothers, so he left my mother and myself at home. And we were downstairs, excuse me, in the living room area, and we had the upstairs, and I heard footsteps on a wooden floor. And I turned to my mother and I said, "Who's that?" Because I knew there was nobody else in the house other than us two. And my mother said, "Oh, that's my little boy." And I thought, well, what does that mean? Because I'm the only little boy in this house. But later on, my mother said that she was frightened because she thought somebody broke in. So she didn't want to scare me. So that was the first thing that came out of her mouth. But yet it just kind of made me question more things. But yeah, it was very distinctive. If you've ever heard footsteps on a wooden floor, and I'm sure all of us have, that's what it was. And like I said, my 5-year-old mind couldn't wrap itself around it, but they were there, and that was my first paranormal experience.
Wow. As you talk about that early moment, something stands out to me. Experiences like that, they either fade away or they follow you. And in your case, they followed you. In fact, when you moved to Virginia, the phenomena didn't stop. Something I was thinking about is this: what kind of experiences continued there in Virginia? Were they the same as your first encounter, or did things start to escalate?
Things started escalating a little bit, but by that time, as I got older and into high school in Virginia, I started getting into the EVP. And back then, for the younger audience members that don't remember tape recorders,
Oh yes.
so I had the big boom box with the dual cassette, and I also had the little handheld Panasonic, and that's what I used to put on the graves at the certain cemeteries to try and capture EVPs. And of course, at that time, I didn't really know anything. I had read a few books from Hans Holzer, who has been a favorite author of mine since I was about 10 years old, and basically just said, "Oh well, if I can do this," and I'd seen a couple other things, but I never really captured anything until I got out of high school. Excuse me, and then that's when it kind of ramped up. But it was just basically between the time I moved to Virginia to the time I got out of high school. Other than that one real scary incident, it was just kind of, footsteps on the floor type thing again in the bedroom where I captured my first EVP that literally scared me almost to death. I actually fell out of the chair that I was in when I played back because I was, I wasn't expecting to get anything. When I got, really was like, whoa. So that was something I really wasn't ready for, but it was quite an experience.
Wow.
That is pretty cool.
Hey,
You know,
I just realized we were thinking we weren't going to see him. Well, we see him just good. We were thinking it was just going to be a picture. I don't know why I just realized. That's awesome. Well,
it's good to be seen,
Well,
right?
so I just want to warn you guys, if you see anything behind me, don't pay any mind to it, because it seems to me when I do these shows, the spirits love to join in. So all
that
all
kind of
sorts of
reminds
things will
me.
happen. So if you see something behind me, like who was that? I live alone. There's nobody else in this house. So if you see somebody behind me, it's my shadow figure buddy.
That kind of reminds me. I used to be on a podcast, um, and it's been, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago, um, with a friend of mine. And it was sort of similar to this. It wasn't as intense and it wasn't as regular. It was kind of sporadic, and it was called Signs of the Times. And we were talking about demons and spiritual warfare. Of course, that's been something that's been a topic of discussion of mine for the last 34 years in ministry. Um, but my friend Travis kept looking behind me, and I thought, I know I'm ugly, but Lord have mercy, what's his deal tonight, And he said, we went on break, and he said, who is that man standing behind you in that black robe? That older man with a white beard and white hair. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I turned and looked. There was nobody there. Well, one day he come to my house, and we were looking at pictures of the saints. And he found a picture of Saint Benedict, who was the father of monasticism. And, I'm a Franciscan friar, fully professed, and I've been a monastic for many, many years. And he looked at that picture and he said, there he is right there. That's the man, Saint Benedict. And, we use the Saint Benedict medal. We use the Saint Benedict prayers in our ritual, our exorcism ritual. And it's ironic how that he was there. He was there with me in the room, right here in this room where I'm sitting right now. So pretty fascinating. Wow. So if we see anything, Kevin, you see me jump up and take off running, it's not because I got scared. It's probably because I had to go take a break from all the coffee.
I was going to say probably from drinking too much coffee. Yeah.
You talked about escalation, and most, and I don't mean this word derogatory, because everybody's definition is different of what normal is. Most normal people stop at strange noises and shadows or a cold chill, but for you, things took a dramatic turn once you reached college in Pennsylvania. And I kind of want you've described having a resident poltergeist during your college years, and that's not something most people can imagine living with. And you talked about it, if we see anything behind you, but what kind of things did this poltergeist do, and how did you mentally and spiritually cope with having that level of activity in your living space?
Well, at the time I was living, I'd rented an off-campus house not too far from the college where I went to, which was Waynesburg University in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. And it was a little small two-bedroom, very nondescript. It wasn't. It didn't seem to be that old, but me and my roommate, we would experience things when we weren't there. I mean, when we weren't there together. Like if he was away at work or something and I was by myself, I'd hear the kitchen cabinets open and close. I'd hear the bathroom door open and close. Um, Things like that. I'd heard we had a side door that went to the outside of the house. We had a front door and the side door. The side door led into the kitchen, and it had a storm door and then the main door. I'd hear that open up all the time, thinking, "Oh, somebody's here," and I'd go out there, and there's nobody there. So it was it was things like this, and this was constant. And then one time, I think we were like a couple weeks in, and we'd have it was like a Sunday, and we were sitting on the couch, just just doing nothing. And he turned to me and he said, "Do you ever have weird stuff happen to you in this house?" And it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders because I was wondering the same thing about him. And we sat down and compared notes. He said, "Well, what do you hear?" And we were hearing the same thing when we weren't there together. And it was just things like that. That was just it was almost an everyday occurrence where the door would open and we know we were the only ones in there. The cabinets were open and closed. And the bathroom door opening and closing really got to me because I thought maybe he came in and I didn't see him come in. But then when you waited 20, 30 minutes and nobody came out of that bathroom and then you knocked on the door and nobody answered and then you open it up and it's empty, you're like, okay. So that was some of the experiences that I had at that house.
Wow.
Wow, that's pretty intense. You
Yeah,
know,
and that's scary. That's scary. I mean, like we've had, well, we live in a type of, we live in on haunted property, and that used to happen every day. Luckily, it doesn't happen every day now, but it can be scary. I mean, it's just like when you get scared, then it can get scary. I think even worse.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because your fear kind of
Yeah,
opens up
yeah,
extrasensory perceptions that you normally every noise you hear is a spirit. Every you hear somebody drive by in a car, you feel a brush of wind, you automatically think that it's something supernatural, and your
Yep.
brain does that. Your brain is kind of like a um, it's the greatest AI ever invented, and it invents things. When you put information into it, you put a thought into it. It invents so many powerful things, and those things control what we hear, what we see. Not saying that the things that we see and hear aren't reality, but there's some things that we see and hear that our fear gives us a heightened sense of things that may or may not be there. Um, and just like sitting around a campfire at night telling Bigfoot stories, you know, you're going to hear something in the woods as you walk away to go to your tent or whatever. You're going to hear things that you wouldn't normally hear because of the fact that your brain is more aware now and it's listening. It's wanting to hear something. It's wanting to see something.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
or they're really there, and then
yeah.
it's really so that reminded me of did you ever have nightmares? Because so reality for me was that this was real, and the nightmares would be like a real event to me with the shadow man and others, and but he would also be seen on the property. Did you ever see shadow people? I haven't read your book yet. I sorry, so I
No,
don't
that's
know.
fine. I've had one shadow man encounter, and this was in another residence in Pennsylvania, and it was kind of crazy because we were in the me and my then girlfriend were in the bedroom getting ready for bed, and I just happened to see this figure that grew from like the floor all the way to the ceiling. The ceiling was probably about 7 foot, and I saw the shoulder, the head, the arms, and I just watched this thing grow and go to the ceiling and thinking we lived on the second floor, so it wasn't a shadow from outside because there was if that was I was the tallest man in the world, and I was so upset with my girlfriend because she said, "Oh, you see him too finally," Finally, and I was like, "Excuse me, you've kept this from me for months." And then that's what she says, "Kevin, I see him all the time." And I was like, "Well, thanks for telling me, because I finally got to see him, and I didn't know what was going on." I at the time had read a few stories about shadow men, but had no idea what they are, and I still don't. But it just kind of bothered me the way she was so nonchalant about, "Oh, you see him now." So I used to kid her about that, like, geez, And later on, when we moved to another property, she actually had him coming out of the walls. But that's a
Wow.
whole nother story for a whole nother show, and it revolved basically around her and her basically her darkness. But yeah, she actually had him coming out of the walls in another place. She was pretty much doing it. But the
Oh,
one that I saw, that was again, and I just remember distinctly, it just grew. It just went all the way to the ceiling. It was the craziest thing.
wow.
I know it sounds crazy, but I'm glad that we live in the digital era. A lot of people don't understand how spirits can be attached to things, to people, to antiques, even to pieces of paper. And I
Yes.
know that sounds crazy, but they can form attachments to that. Back years ago, when we began investigations and things, there was no internet, there was no website for the Order of Exorcists and things like that. And back years ago, people used to handwrite their requests and send them in. And sometimes those spirits would accompany those handwritten requests and would cause a lot of disturbance. And that happens. Anything that you get, anything that you buy, it needs to always bless it. Always make sure that you
Yes.
bless it, because there could be something attached to it that's negative, that's malevolent, that you don't
Absolutely.
want to bring to your house. And sometimes people, not necessarily, are always possessed, because in reality, about 5 out of every 4,000 cases is actual possession. But people have obsession. There's an attachment, just like an attachment when people have an attachment to drugs and alcohol. There's a demonic or a spiritual attachment, maybe not even demonic, but there's an attachment there, and it seems like it follows people everywhere they go. And that's why it's important to know who you have a relationship with. We think we know them. I mean, you don't want to sit down and have 100 questions you go over when you're getting ready to go out on a date. That would be a big turnoff. The person would probably never go out with you ever again. But that is important. That we're very cautious and pay attention to what's going on around us and our surroundings.
I can imagine being the me I am now and having to go on a date. I'll be like, they'd be like, "What is this?" I'm like, "What's that? What's that?"
And they're like, "Here, let me give you a tablet. I got a quiz you got to take before we go out. It's only
Oh,
100 questions. It'll be all right.
so
You got to get 80% or above so you can
right.
pass."
So Kevin, on in your location in your area, now we know a lot of people in those areas, so I know there's a lot of haunted land in your area.
Oh yeah.
Is that some of the things that you have found?
Yes. They have really, really great ghost stories here. And I've been to a few properties. I haven't been able to get to a lot, but being on the eastern shore of Maryland, there's a lot of water deaths because there's a lot of water. And those have always fascinated me. Those type of stories, and there's a lot of haunted beaches and haunted lighthouses and things that have fascinated me. And again, um, because and I'm going to say this, and I guess it's okay in this time. I'm a big homebody because I'm getting up there in age, and I don't want to deal with the outside world. I know that sounds horrible. So usually when I come home from work, I lock the door and just get the cup of coffee and veg until bedtime. But again, I've made friends with a lot of people. They actually opened up a ghost museum here,
Wow.
and I have yet to be out there. I've yet to go there. And they have a really cool ghost tour that hits
Wow.
some haunted places out here too. So yeah, the Eastern Seaboard has a lot of good ghost stories, and um, perhaps that might be something for a book down the road, maybe collection of stories from here.
Well, speaking of your books, so you What is your writing process?
Well, the Ghost in Me, the book that's out currently, that was a labor of love. That took about 15 years from the first word to the published to actually having it published, and I just kept adding to it as I went along because things kept happening to me. And I know when people read that, they think this can't be because people have called me a ghost magnet, and I've called myself that as well. But I think of myself as, do you remember like the motel signs, the neon motel signs that have vacancies? That's kind of what I think of me, is that I'm the beacon of light that the spirits see, and they're like, hey, this guy can see and hear us. Let's go for him. So that's kind of where I think of myself as, is I'm kind of like a beacon, but I have been called a ghost magnet. And I know, and I actually, and I touch upon this in my second book, somebody that actually gave me a book review, um, she was kind in the way she phrased it. She was basically saying, she kind of in a roundabout way called me crazy, and I'm okay with that. But it was just the way that she kind of was like, oh, this and that. Oh, he wanted to see a ghost, and then look, he did. And it was just like, yeah, I didn't really want to see one. It just kind of happened. But yeah, so it's just so my writing process is when something happens. I've actually had in the last couple of months, unfortunately, this has been a really bad year for death for me. Um, but I've actually had a lot of cool experiences come out of that, and that's going in the next book. And actually, two of the experiences that I had, I put in Kelly's book. Those are the stories in the Phenomena book that we put in. So,
That's awesome.
but yeah, it's just basically experience, write it down, and then go back and edit. And like I said, there's never, I never have a time where something doesn't happen where I can write it down.
Right. Wow.
When you was talking about being a ghost magnet, I couldn't help. My mind went straight to the movie Ghost. Whoopi Goldberg trying to sleep and Patrick Swayze singing "I'm Henry VIII I am." Have you ever had that kind of
Yes.
experience?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I have because I used to have. I think at one point in time was a child spirit, and child spirits are like child living children. They're the same. They're basically their soul. So when the child tries to get your attention, they'll do anything to get your attention. And if that means stomping on the floor and slamming doors, that's what they're going to do. And I've actually had stuff thrown at me. So yeah, so it's whatever way that they can try and get a hold of you, they will. I mean, everyone usually now it's more um, blobs of light or darkness that like I notice out of the corner of my eye, and I have to look over, and of course there's nothing there. So it's a lot of that lately. But in the past, yeah, I've had and I've tried to ignore them, and that's what they'll do. Like I said, they'll stomp, and like I said, I've had stuff thrown at me. So it's like when it's just like a human, because my belief is that you take what you when you pass, you take your personality with you. So if you were a jerk in this life, you're going to be a jerk as a ghost. If you're a good person here, you're going to be a good person in the afterlife. Um, but yeah, they're just like children. When they want attention, they'll do what they need to do to say, "Hey, I'm here, and you better acknowledge me."
that's that's wonderful. I remember one time when I was really getting involved and of course I was mentored for a long time by Archbishop Enright and trained personally by him. Not many people get to say that because he's very busy and many years ago he chose to take me under his wing and train me. But the early part of that ministry, um, it wasn't uncommon for us to see angels in the house, lights going through the house, back and forth. And one night in particular, my wife and I was talking about the other day. There was some kind of warfare going on because you could hear the angel walking, pacing back and forth through the house, and the footsteps were loud. Oh, so loud that in so much it almost woke my children up. And my wife asked God, please let him calm down so that my children don't get woke up because they were young. Elijah was just a baby. And but you're right. if they want to get our attention, they can. I've been awakened by demonic spirits too. Darkness, um, and it's just a part of the world we live in. You have to understand that it's a part of the world we live in. Sometimes the veil's thin. Sometimes the veil between our world and their world becomes so thin that what word am I looking for, Mercedes? They mesh. They collide, and it's really interesting. And a 5-year-old kid isn't going to make up something that they've seen and heard. And your mom definitely wasn't going to make that up. She wasn't trying to scare you. Obviously, she heard it as well. And, I think it's interesting that it's been something that's followed you the rest of your life. Um, it just allows us to, kind of peel the layers back of things that we've been taught and told all of our life, because there's some people that don't believe there's anything that exists after death, but I believe that we do. I believe we go on, and like you said, we take our love, we take our emotions, we take our attitudes, everything about us that makes us who we are. This is just a vehicle, this body, and the real person that lives inside of us is the real us. And now I hope I look better in the afterlife. I hope I'm young again and have a full head of hair again in the afterlife. But a lot of people are starting to, Kevin, to talk. A lot of people are starting to come out and talk about the experiences that they've had. Millions of people have experienced these things, and before it was taboo to talk about. Right? I mean, before Art Bell, I never heard about this stuff. And when Art Bell came along, I'm like, wow, this guy's wild. I'm gonna listen to him. And I was hooked. Stayed up all night long just to listen to him. And your story is fascinating. We talk about investigating, and something every investigator wrestles with is interpretation. I think that's the big thing. I mean, we don't want to say the wrong thing, and we don't want to say anything that's going to demean from what it is that we've investigated and the evidence that we've brought forth. Because once you capture something, the question is, what do you do with it? How do you make sense of it? And, you've written an entire book about your experiences. And Mercedes beat me to it about the writing process and what guides you. But, or present that stands out to you, that's had the most impact on you as far as your encounters go?
That's a good question. Gosh, I might have to think about that. I would have to say probably my first EVP experience, because that really solidified that there is something out there. And again, I've had people call me, and I'm used to people calling me crazy. I am. I think everybody is a little bit in their own way. I consider myself controlled crazy. If that makes any sense.
Same here.
But yeah, and like I said, when I had my first EVP experience, there was no one in this house. Everyone was gone. I was the only human being in that house, and when I captured this voice, there was nobody there. And again, unfortunately, because back then with those tapes, it got eaten, so I didn't have the evidence because the tape got shredded. So people, I don't have anything physically to say, hey, this is what I heard, this is what happened. Now I have digital. So, if I capture something, it's there, but I have to admit, I do love the little handheld tape recorders. I think those work better for me, quite honestly. But yeah, I have to say the first EVP experience, because that really, like I said, that really set me on this journey to figure out what is going on, and why do we do what we do, and what's going on, and everything. And again, there's always more questions than answers. And I think that's how it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, spirit manipulation of electronic devices. You talked about the hand, and people that have never used one of them little handheld Panasonics don't know how amazing they really are, and how accurate they are when they pick things up. And we use all this sophisticated scientific data recording computers, and we've had guests on here that are phenomenal at doing that. I mean, tremendous investigators that in my estimation, a few weeks ago we had the young gentleman on, the two gentlemen on that recorded stuff that nobody's ever recorded as far as um, video of apparitions and things in their research. It's just phenomenal. We'll have to get him the links to that, Mercedes, and let him watch that.
Paranormal Unearthed.
Who was it?
Paranormal Unearthed.
Paranormal Unearthed, yes. But it would be harder to manipulate the old fashioned hand recorder. If you recorded something on that or you picked up a voice, it would actually have to be some kind of energy manipulating that recording device to get that on the tape.
Yep.
So it's least likely for you to be able to try to pull one over on everybody. I mean, you can edit those tapes. Trust me, when I was on radio preaching all over the world on shortwave radio, it was on cassette, and we had to edit the cassette tape. You had to put everything in on that one cassette, and I forget how we done it now. It's been so long ago. But it's very awesome that you had that experience recording, because I believe it was real. Now, let me ask you a question, Mercedes. Then I'm gonna ask him a question. Then I'm gonna shut up, because I'm kind of excited and on fire tonight about talking to him, because he's very exciting, very interesting man. What do you think about these spirit boxes? These people that use these machines that goes through all these channels and tries to pull out voices, and as they're speaking to somebody, they hear a word or they hear a phrase spoken, and maybe it matches what question they're asking. What are the chances of that being accurate? I mean, what's your feelings on that, Kevin?
I honestly have tried an SB7, and it didn't really work for me. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I just find it really hard to pick out phrases that mean anything when they're doing this. And I know that they're sweeping through a lot of channels. Um, I really don't know. I mean, I guess if you use it and you believe that you heard something, then that's fine. I personally don't really like them for investigation purposes. I would rather just go with the standard tape recorder, but that's just me. But like I said, the couple of times I've used that, and I watch a lot of these shows where they use the SB7 or whatever spirit box, and I honestly can't hear anything.
I can't either. I've watched hundreds of hours of those, and I can't hear it either. Go ahead, Mercedes. I know you got a question. You look like you got a burning question.
Well, I was just thinking about that too. I had somebody had given me one of those, and I tried to do that here, and I just drove me nuts. Like I was like, is there something better than this? So yeah, I mean, I can hear them talking anyway. So, but it's like, I mean, when I think about, how many years it's taken to get to where I'm at now. So that brings the question to me, as far as like you started like as a child hearing or seeing things. Now, one question I have is, did anything ever happen to you other than those footsteps when you were a child? Did they come to your room, or did you see anything in that house? Do you think that something did follow you to another location? Did something seem familiar as you grew up?
The only thing that I remember, and that's a great question, and I've been asked something similar to that before. The only thing that I can remember after that was so the upstairs was a wooden floor hall, and then we had the stairs leading down into the, like there was a foyer, and then we went in the living room. So I had a dream when I was still in that house where I was at the bottom of those stairs, and all these stuffed animals walked down the stairs by themselves toward me. And I still remember. I'm as I'm telling you this, it's in my mind's eye right now. I'm watching it replay itself, because I have like this weird, like I can like stuff from that long ago. It's so vivid in my mind, but I can still see these stuffed animals walking down the stairs by themselves to me as a 5-year-old. But again, that was a dream, and no one else, none of my family members said that they experienced anything in that house, but most of them really don't agree with what I do. So, and that's okay. But they didn't experience anything. But that was the only other thing. And, you know, I'm still working on dreams because I've had some really crazy ones, and I touch upon that in my next book. But that was the only other thing. And I don't explain that, but it was, yeah, these stuffed animals just walk down the stairs by themselves. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that could be spooky, or it could be kind of fun for a 5-year-old. Like, hey, look at
Yeah.
their, they're all
Because
coming
I
down.
didn't have, they weren't mine. That was the crazy thing. I didn't have them. I don't know where they came from.
Oh,
They weren't
wow.
mine.
My grandmother and them used to live in a house on Smith Street here in the city that I live in, and just a normal, regular street. And my grandmother used to say that when she was a child, she would go to the kitchen, and the doors would open and close, the cabinets would open and close, and she said she used to dance with ghosts. Of course, my um, great great grandmother called them hitch coffees. That's what she called ghosts. She was a full blooded Cherokee Indian, and of course, they had different beliefs, different culture. But they called him hitch coffee, and it ain't nothing abnormal. I mean, my family, from my great grandfather who claimed to see a woman go in the earth, just kind of like teleport into the earth out by. We used to have an outhouse. That's before I was born. When I was born, they finally moved the bathroom inside, and when I was born, we came up poor. We lived in a 3-bedroom or 3-room house. We had a living room, a kitchen, and a bath and a bedroom. Me, mom, dad, and my sister slept in the bedroom. And I remember in the wintertime, the cracks where the walls come together, ice would form along those walls. And in the kitchen, we didn't have running water. We didn't have any air conditioning. We had gas heat. In the living room, there was like 10 beds where everybody slept. And when I say everybody, people in our family came and they camped out there, and that was home. Everybody had Thanksgiving there. Everybody had Christmas dinner there. When they tore the old home place down, our family separated. But I'll never forget my dad in the early 70s, began to study, demons and angels. And he kind of felt a calling to that. And it really wasn't a calling. It was more it intrigued him, and he began to study that and research that. And we use a lot of the material of Dr. Lester Summerall in our teaching. Though he was a Pentecostal ministry, he was very proficient in demonology and angelology. And they were reading a lot of material by him and a man by the name of Kenneth Hagin back in the day. And my dad said that they had an experience of this demon that came down in a whirlwind. And when it looked at him in the window, it looked like a monkey in the face. And they rebuked it. And I think that spirit ended up moving into the basement, because I remember as a child going into that basement, even though the lights were on, it seemed dark. And you could always feel a dark presence in there. And I was 7 when we moved from the old house after Dad got a job, and we moved into a bigger house, a nicer house. And then later on, me and my sister got our own bedroom. That was pretty cool. But you could hear that spirit in the bathroom, and it would breathe very, very loudly, and it would hiss, and you could feel its breath as it hissed at you. It stood behind the toilet, back against the wall. And I'll never forget my dad, because it was malevolent. It scared everybody. And as Dad was studying all these things, I'll never forget my dad going down there and praying and taking authority in the name of Christ over that spirit that was there at that house. I think there was something to do with that land that was cursed. Not our garden area. Our garden always grew great. My grandmother had a green thumb. She could grow tomatoes in the desert. I don't know how that woman did it. God rest her soul. But that property, people saw all kinds of things on that property. I've got a picture that I'm going to share one day with Mercedes. We're going to share it online on our broadcast here, of a picture of an image of my sister. We had an old color computer hooked up to an old Zenith TV. And this is way back in the early 80s. I'm talking like 82, 83. And there's this image of this female looking upside down out of the TV at my sister. And there's no way that computer could have generated this image. It's some kind of a spirit. And it's ironic, and I've not talked to the people that live there on that property, since they built a house. They built a big home there on that property. It was huge property. So I don't know if they've experienced anything or not, but you know, sometimes ghosts, spirits are territorial. And it just comes with the property. You know, you move into a place, it comes with the property, but with you, it's kind of like you was the property. So, you know, and I know you probably had all kinds of people tell, you know, your experiences and things that they've witnessed and, you know, things that they've seen. And um, I think we all have those experiences. It just, we're afraid to talk about it. But now, you know, we got a platform where we can talk about these things and it's non-judgmental and we can share our experiences with one another. And I think that's very important. It helps people feel a sense of community, you know, a sense of relief, being able to talk about these things. Did you ever think we'd ever get to this point, Kevin? Did you ever think that we would get to this place in history where talking about what we're talking about tonight wouldn't be taboo?
Honestly, no. When I first started having my experiences in the 80s and early 90s, again, it was almost like, um, and I can tie this in with the addiction counseling that we did, is that it was almost as if when you have an addiction, you don't want people to know, so you try to hide it as best you can, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how this was, because there was no TV shows, there was no radio shows. You had some books, but you know, back then there wasn't any email, so we couldn't just email somebody if we wanted to talk to somebody. Like, you know, we had to physically write a letter, which, oh my God, these day and age, don't even say that to anyone, because you know they
It's a
wouldn't know
bad
what to
word.
do. But yeah, we actually had to put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and actually physically fill it out and send it. So yeah, I think it was amazing, and I have to say, one of the first shows I really got into back in the late 2010s or early 2010s was Taps. I don't know if you remember Ghost Hunters.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that show, and that was kind of, they kicked the door open for like Zach Bagans and people after that. But yeah, Taps was like the first show that I ever watched that was like, wow, they actually go in and investigate and they do these things. But yeah, I never thought we'd get to this point. I think it's really cool because, you know, now you've got people coming out talking about aliens.
Yeah.
You know, Bigfoot sightings are
Yeah.
common, things like that. They're not afraid to tell it around the campfire. Now they'll come out in public and say it, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Now we're having Bigfoot festivals, you know?
Hey, I want to say, guess who is on our chat tonight? Paranormal Latte Podcast.
Hey,
Hey, that's actually that's
Dr.
Coach
K in the
Dr.
house.
Kelly.
Dr. Kelly's in the house.
Dr. Kelly's in the house. So
As the young
Joshua,
kids say,
she says, Joshua, that happened recently to my sister, her deceased husband. Yeah. So what you were talking about reminded her of something that recently happened. Now, Dr. Kelly has got a tremendous amount of things. Talk about ghost magnet. I think you both are similar. I mean, she really does. They just swarm her wherever she goes, no matter what country she's in.
Yes, I've read a handful of her books, and I love reading her books because her stories are like great. And I was like, man, I can relate to some of them, and she just has some really great stories. So yeah.
Well, it's just an honor too to be on all the podcasts, and she had me featured in her new book, which I don't have it right here. I have it over here, but that was really an honor. So thank you, Dr. Kelly. We love you.
she said it was about the spirit showing upside down on the TV. I need to get that picture and show everybody. It's very fascinating. And, you know, it's always joke with people and tell them it's Halloween around my house every day because I can feel there's things that walk through this house and touch me while I'm standing or talking and you know, like right now I can feel the presence of something or someone standing beside me. And I don't feel like it's malevolent. I feel like it's probably an angel of God. Um, it could be Christ himself. If it is, he's welcome in this house. Angels welcome, bad spirits no. You got to stay outside. You're not allowed in.
I've got a curious one in the kitchen right now.
Yeah, I was wondering how the activity is where you're at now.
Yeah, it's well, like right now, it's make. I think it knows. Like, well, it's knowing, but yeah, it's kind of ramping up here to the left of me, and that's the kitchen area. But usually they're fairly quiet. Usually but again, like I said, they don't they don't telegraph anything anymore. They just pop up. So yeah, it could be 3 o'clock in the morning. It could be 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll hear or see something and be like, oh, okay. I mean, almost to the point where it's like, I didn't think I'd get to this point, but it's like they don't try to scare me anymore. They're just letting me know that they're here, and I acknowledge them. But it's to the point, like I said, I think the other day there was like something happened over here, and I was like, "What the heck was that?" And I had to get up and look because it was a noise I had not heard before in the kitchen, and I was like, "What's going on over here?" So I had to tell them, I said, "Hey, pipe down," and then they stopped. So
Just
it's
as
gotten to
long
the
as
point now,
I
just as long as
wanted to
they don't get
share this.
hungry and throw a skillet at you or something crazy like that, right?
No, the
Oh, here it
physical
is.
beings have done that to me. I actually had an ex that did that.
So Kevin is
I actually had to duck one of the iron skillets, the big, the old timey kind.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What is that now?
this is the book. Kevin is in this too. Okay, so this
Oh,
is
okay.
Phenomena Unexplained Happenings. Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. It's hard to see it. Here we go. But he's in there too with his stories. And
Okay, there we go.
yeah. So yeah, so we're both in here, and I'm sorry, I meant to say that. I'm just always so excited I'm in there. I guess my ego comes out sometimes. But anyway, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's just that you're excited of your accomplishments and you're excited to be able to share your story, and you should
Yeah.
be.
Yep.
Well, and Kevin, I mean, I know you understand too because when you actually do write these stories, this is my first book. Or this is, really, I wasn't planning this life. So, the fact that we talk about it, it is neat that people do, want to hear about it. When you actually get to talk about it. So it's I think it's good for us to be able to talk about it. And I know that Bishop Joshua is writing some books now. He should have his books out pretty soon.
I got five of them I'm writing at the same time.
You
Plus
Oh
wrote,
being a
wow.
seminary professor
yeah.
is and a mentor is just
Well, just one at a time. That's
yes. Thank you. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take your advice and do one at a time.
yeah.
Uh, my mind is I'm very bad ADHD. Okay, when I was a kid, they didn't have a diagnosis for it, but I'm very bad ADHD, and my mind sometimes goes in so many different directions. That's why I can't go to sleep at night. I mean, I'm pulled in thousands of different directions, and I've got to try to focus on closing my eyes and going to sleep. Sometimes I just go and go till I collapse, and that's probably what'll happen when I die. I'll just go and go and just collapse one day, and they'll come and try to wake me up, and I'll be gone. Um, so
Well, that's
you know
sad.
they told me that because I have sleep apnea, they're like, well, you'll die in your sleep. I said, well, good Lord, that's great. I don't want to suffer. That's a great thing. So
Oh my,
I don't, you know,
oh my stars.
it's a part of life. And I think the reason it's taboo, Kevin, is because we're so afraid to face the fact that it's going to happen to all of us.
Yes.
And it is. I mean, we can sit here and joke all day long about it and say, yeah, we're going to live forever, but we're getting older. And our bodies are starting to say, hey, you're not 25 anymore, Bishop. you know, and you all know I'm suffering from TS. You ever heard of that?
Two stomachs.
So
I've heard it.
I've already told that one before, but she still laughs at it, Kevin. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Well, Kevin, so what are some things that you have that is upcoming that you're excited about for next year? That you want to write another book? What's going on?
Yeah. I'm hopefully my goal right now is to be as soon as maybe February. Hopefully by February is my goal is to finish my next book and actually get it to my publisher and finally actually get the second part of my book. It's basically a continuation from the publication of my first book to now, and everything that's happened with the publishing process, the writing process, and of course the ghostly experiences and things I've experienced since the first book came out. After that, I was so upset. I had a start before I moved down here to Maryland from Virginia 4 years ago. I'd done battlefield ghosts. I was working on a book about them, and I actually had some really cool experiences in some battlefields in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And I didn't use the S button on the computer, and it crashed, and I lost it.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, and I had about 7 or 8 battlefields, and I had Antietam.
oh boy.
And but you know what? I think that's a good thing because now I get to go back.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to Gettysburg yet, so I
Well,
didn't make it to
Yeah.
Gettysburg. But so that may be the next project after this book comes out. Is hopefully my publisher will like this next one and publish this one, and I can go and do that. And actually, one thing I would like to do, and I'm going to try and do, I'd like to go to some of these like the Paracons and things like that around the country if I can get there, like the Bigfoot conventions. I know Ozark Mountain Publishing, who is my publishing company, we have the big UFO festival every year
yeah,
and
I'd love
every
to
April,
go.
and we used to have they had a writing one, but I think COVID kind of killed that, unfortunately. But they do have the big UFO festival, so um, that's something to look forward to. But they have all sorts of different festivals all over the country to go to, and you get to meet people and do things. They have a really big one in Gettysburg that I was invited to a couple years ago. Never got to make it up there, but
Oh,
hopefully that'll be something to do coming up. So yeah, I've got I think a lot going on. Hopefully that'll be fruitful.
I
Our
think
friend,
that's fun. Yeah.
our friend Jason McLeod goes to different paracons and things like that to
Yeah.
sell his book Dark Siege, his books that he has out, and he travels. I mean, I know that he's probably talked to you about it, Mercedes. But he travels thousands and thousands of miles to go to these, and he drives by himself. He's like our friend Bill Bean. Bill will jump in the car and drive 2,000 miles, perform an exorcism, and drive back home the same night. I don't see how he
Yeah,
does it. The
I
guy's
was just going to ask you about him because I know he's when you say exorcism, he's the first person I think of.
Oh,
yeah,
And
he's the one that helped us.
I've heard him on a number of shows. I've never met the man, but he
Oh,
sounds great. But I've
yeah,
heard him on different shows, and he's fascinating.
yeah.
I'm gonna
He
tell you what. In
is.
person, he's
Yeah.
a warrior. I mean, we Mercedes and I actually got to see him, touch him. He's
Hug him.
real. Hugged him. He's a real person.
That's
He's not just
awesome.
a he's not just a mythological creature. He's real.
It was crazy. And then Kevin, he's the one that, you know, I'd never heard of him. And some lady message from one of that Dave Schrader. I put us on the prayer list of Dave Schrader.
Oh yeah.
And Dave tried to kind of correspond with me, but this woman messaged and she says, "You need to reach out to Bill Bean. I think he could help you." And I'm like, "Who's Bill Bean?" I, I didn't know because I didn't know. But he was the one who actually did help us. And it was through Bill Bean, really, that I met Desiree and then I met Archbishop Ron and then everybody else. So Bill
That's
Bean is
awesome.
really wonderful. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you too, Kevin.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Billy's
I
awesome.
think that'd be great. It'd be great if we could all go and go to like the same conferences sometime. Wouldn't that be fun if we could all
That'd
just
be
like meet up?
cool.
I want to meet Dr. Kelly in person and give her a big hug too.
That'd be awesome.
No, I feel like I'm awake. I don't know. Usually I'm not awake this wake at night on. So I'm
Well,
never
I'll tell
get.
you what. I usually, because I'm old, I get up early in the morning, so I'm actually like a couple hours past my bedtime.
Oh,
I
I
usually
hear.
don't stay up this late because I get up at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to go to
Oh
work.
yeah,
So, but
this is.
yeah, I'm like wired. See, this is what it does: is the adrenaline gets going because I love talking about paranormal, no matter what it is, and the adrenaline kicks in, and it'll take me to like past midnight to get to sleep, but that's okay because this has been a great show. So, and I just love talking about not just what I do, but anything paranormal is just fascinating to me. And I could talk all night.
Yeah.
I agree with Dr. Kelly. Kevin, you're not old. Age
No.
is just a number. You're not old. Um, so don't say that. You know, we're young at heart, and that's all that matters, right? We're
And
young
you're
at
not
heart.
ugly, Bishop Josh. You always say, "Oh, I'm ugly." You are not ugly.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
someone told me one time, Kevin, that I had the perfect face for
The
radio.
radio. Yeah.
So, I'm like,
Oh, well.
Guys are silly.
I do have one more question, Mercedes,
Okay.
that's burning in my mind to ask Kevin. Um, what do you think all of these experiences have taught you? Firstly, it's a two-part question about the unseen world.
That there is an unseen world, and that when we die, this isn't the end. There's something else out there.
Absolutely. And my second part to that question is, what do you hope people understand about ghosts and hauntings and the reality of the supernatural after hearing your story?
Well, that's one reason I'm glad you asked me that question, because I always seem to forget to tell people that. I wrote this book to actually help people, because there's a lot of people that I know, because, I'm sure you guys have experienced the same thing. Like when you're talking about this, nobody will say anything, or they'll kind of give you the side eye. And then when people walk away and you're by yourself, they'll look around and they'll be like, oh, hey, by the way, this happened to me. I get that all the time
Oh
because they're
yeah.
afraid to talk about it. So what I'm thinking, what I'm hoping is this, when people read my book, they say, hey, this guy's not some kook. He's not some, whatever. He's actually a normal guy that's experienced these things, and and it's okay. And again, I've always told people, reach out to me anytime you want, because like I said, I love talking about it. I love to try and give my advice on things and help people, no matter what it is. But I just want to let them know that you're not alone. And when I was going through this, I pretty much was, because like we said, there wasn't anything really back then to turn to. We had to kind of take it inwardly and deal with it, and then wait till like 10, 15 years later when it opened back up. But that a lot of people in this world experience this stuff, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And there are people out there to talk to if you need to.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's a good book too, just to have that in the book. That's the truth. There's so many people out. I remember when Desiree and I first actually met with Bill Bean. One of those times he asked us to be a person to help with a
Warrior mode.
yeah, like to help us, to help people. We were like a reach out. We did a weekly meeting for people. And I was surprised that he put a stop to it at some point. But Desiree and I were like having our get-togethers, like it was, I can't remember what would it be, but we were helping people. And so it's kind of interesting that that's what happened with the unseen realm. We came back. It was like God or had a reason, like we were supposed to help people, she and I together. And so I just think it's important because there's so many people out there like myself when I was experiencing all this stuff and it got too much, trying to find help during the pandemic too, you know,
Made it twice as hard.
made you feel like you're crazy. So I just think it's important for people to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely.
We're normal people here. We may not be normal, but we are fairly normal people here.
Everybody's definition of normal is different, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
everybody's got an opinion, and the only opinion that matters is my opinion about me and God's opinion about me, right? That's it. You got to be confident in yourself. You have to, like with the unseen realm. When Archbishop first approached me, I'm a very private person. I never intended to do podcasts. I never intended to do TikTok and all that. I was dead set against it. And now I have to do TikTok every night. I have to put videos out there every night. I've had people delivered from drugs and alcohol, possession, everything through little TikTok videos. It's crazy what God can do through a minute, 30-second video. But when the Archbishop approached me, I was like, yeah, right. I ain't getting on no podcast. He's like, you got to. I want you to be with me. I'm like, no, boss. I'll call him boss. I'm like, I'm not doing it. He's like, pray about it. Come on, see what you think. And he's got a way of, he's got those big brown eyes, you know, and he's got a way of persuading me. But I love the man. He's my mentor, and I don't think he would ever do anything to harm me. And I tell you what, I've got to meet not only Mercedes, I've got to meet Joe, Mercedes' wonderful husband, who I love as my brother. And I got to meet Desiree, got to meet Dr. Glenn, I've got to meet Dr. Adrian, and now I've got to meet you. I've got to meet Dr. Kelly and Jason McLeod and Bill Bean and Dan Todd and Stan Fikes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's hard to believe how many people we can connect with in this big old world we live in. And it's amazing that we get to connect together on this platform. And you know, Kevin, it's been awesome tonight. You have to come back. You have
I would
to.
be honored to come back anytime.
And you know what? When the time change comes, it's an hour earlier, so we could put you in then. I like that. Like it's later with time change.
Well, we lose an hour of daylight on the East. I'm on the East Coast too. I'm in Kentucky, so we're on the same time zone, you and I.
Yep.
Not too far from each other. I drove through your state. Matter of fact, heading up to Bridgeport, Connecticut, when we had Defeating the Demonic last year.
Yeah.
So beautiful drive. Loved it. I had to bring Melissa through New York City afterwards. And she didn't like that too well.
I was going to say sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think this was a great, fun time.
It was awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's awesome. Kevin, you've been an awesome guest. You know, Mercedes,
thank you.
You're always an awesome co-host, always. Sure. And you know, it's amazing to be able to talk to you. It just flowed so smooth. It's like we've known each other forever, and you know, you got such a great spirit about you, and I'm glad to call you my friend now. And you know, if I can be of any help to you, we've got different groups of teams of investigators throughout the East Coast. If we can help you in any way, reach out to the Order of Exorcists. We stand ready to stand side by side with you if you need our help, should the need arise.
Thank you. I've had a blast tonight. It was a great show, and I was glad meeting both of you. And this has really been fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, I guess we'll say good night then. So good night, everybody. And thank you, Stan Fikes and the Web Radio Network, for letting us have this awesome show on. We appreciate you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. We love you.